Have you ever been engaged in a conversation and something is said that triggers a memory of your childhood? Well, it happened to me. And the words were simply, always be camera ready. Let me share with you where it first began. When I was 8 years old, I used to sit in front of my dresser mirror and I would pretend that I was reporting the news with Walter Cronkite, who happened to be an American broadcaster for CBS News in New York. And I would sit there and I would have my papers in my hand and I'd let Walter tell the story and then I would tell a story. So one evening, my grandmother came into my room and she said, "What are you doing?" So immediately, I had to let my mirror audience know I have to take a station break. And I said, "Grandmother, I'm reporting the news with Walter Cronkite." And so she said, "Well, let Mr. Cronkite know you need to take a wardrobe change. You got to take a break." So she instructed me to go to my closet and get one of my Sunday dresses, my Sunday shoes. And I sat down in the chair after I was dressed, and she began to comb my hair and put this beautiful Sunday bow in the top. And as she leaned over to me, she said the words, "You see, this is how you're supposed to look in front of a camera. There are thousands of people that are watching you, and you always want to make sure that you're dressed appropriately." Now, unbeknownst to my grandmother, who had no knowledge of a TV room, of broadcasting, or being in front of a camera as a news reporter, she instilled something in me that prepared me for the rest of my life. When I graduated from high school, my goal was to go to college and obtain my degree to become a news reporter. But life didn't necessarily go in the straight, narrow path as such. There were some turns, there were some curves. I became a mother of 2 children, and I had the responsibility of ensuring that they would be taken care of until their adult life. So that meant putting them through college. So my goal of going to college and obtaining my degree and pursuing my career that I've always wanted to do was put on the back burner. When my youngest daughter graduated from college, I then decided, okay, now's my time. I can do it. Let me start enrolling in some colleges and see where I get accepted. And there was a program at New York University that I actually qualified for, but unfortunately, you had to be a full-time student in order to participate in the program. So my dreams were kind of diminished at that time. I became discouraged and I said, you know what, maybe now's not the right time. So again, it was put on the back burner. Fast forward to the year of 2020, a time where all of us here have experienced change. We were changing in our careers as far as our workplaces. Our children weren't allowed to go to school, so they were being homeschooled, and it was just a changing time for everyone. And I found that I had all this time on my hands because my 2-hour commute into the city was eliminated and my 2-hour commute out of the city was eliminated. So I kept seeing these commercials come on for Southern New Hampshire University. And all of a sudden, the light went off in my head, and it was like, now is your time. So I immediately, the next day, called and I spoke to an advisor there, and they told me that, the different programs that they had, they didn't have a journalism program, but they had a very good, strong communications program. So I enrolled, and within 48 hours, I became a student of Southern New Hampshire University. As time went on, my presence on social media became even stronger because I couldn't go to work. So, I was online and interacting with different people across all different stages and careers and times of life. And one of the individuals that I interacted with the most was Robin Roberts. And on Twitter, she would put up the post about, inspirational messages, and she would have her morning prayer. And one day I decided I was going to comment on it because it was very inspirational to me. And little did I know, Robin actually replied to my comment. So it kept going on for some time, and then one day I got an inbox message from an executive producer for Good Morning America, and they asked me, would I be interested in having a conversation about a segment that they were going to be having, which was going to be titled Viewers' Impressions of how they would come into the studio and how they would, react to seeing where everything took place on the Good Morning America set in New York. And so, of course, I grabbed the opportunity. I said, I'd love to come. Of course I'd come. What other place would I rather be than on the set of Good Morning America? So the day that I went to the studio, I went upstairs to the green room and, they came up, they did a rapid COVID test and everything. Now, mind you, I had no idea what really was going on. And I didn't even expect to see Robin that day because we were still in the protocols of COVID. So you couldn't really be in close distance to anyone during that time. After I was mic'd, they took me downstairs into the studio. And they said, okay, we want to see your expression. We want to see how you feel walking into the studio of Good Morning America. So as I walked in, I looked to my right and I could see the window and I could see Times Square. And then I glanced to my left and there stood Robin Roberts. My knees began to shake. And I literally landed in her arms as she hugged me. I said, Robin, I think I'm going to pass out. And she's like, no, you're not going to pass out. You're going to be fine. She escorted me over to the interview area and we sat down and she shared with me, she said, you thought you were coming here today for a segment about viewer appreciation, right? I said, yes. She said, but that's not what this is about. This entire segment is about you because I've been following you. I've been reading your comments. I've been seeing how you've wanted to pursue a career in broadcast journalism and how you've gone back to school and you've decided to pursue that degree and you decided to make that midlife career change. This entire segment is about you. As the tears fell from my eyes, I immediately apologized to the makeup person because I'm like, I just ruined your makeup. But I said to her, the gratitude that I feel right now in my heart, you don't know how much this means to me. And she said, no, you don't know how much your story is going to mean to someone else. That day we did an entire segment. I went downstairs in the studio. I did a read and it was great. I mean, the first time reading from a teleprompter, I was so excited. I was just like, oh my goodness, I really want to do this. And she saw the enthusiasm. She saw the excitement in me. And she said, wow, Nancy, you really want to do this? I said, yes, I do. And so she gave me some guidance. She said, look for some internships and see if you can get into some internships with a local station and try to see how that can help you connect closer to being a broadcast journalist because you'll learn so much during your internship. So I did just that. And I was accepted into an internship that fall of 2022 with a local ABC station, which is Eyewitness News in New York. I did the internship and then I returned back to my former employer for the year of 2023. And in the latter year of 2023, I received an invitation for an interview for a winter-spring internship with Good Morning America in 2024. And I immediately said, this is it. This is my time. This is really the time for me to make my personal blueprint of making a midlife career change. So when I told my then employer that I was resigning, I gave them a 2-month notice. They were grateful for that. And I decided that this was the time for me to really put myself back on the front burner. Now, leaving a nearly 6-figure job and going into an internship was a tough decision. But I knew that in making this personal blueprint that I had to have some steps that I would have to follow. So the first one was to earn my college degree, which I was already doing. I was pursuing my degree. The second step was to build a budget to ensure that I would be financially stable in order to make this midlife career change. And I did just that. The third step, which was the internship, really gave me the skill set and the experience that I needed to get in front of that camera and make those stories and report those stories, as I watched so many of my peers do during my time, during my internship. And let me share with you also, I worked with some of the greatest producers, camera people. Everyone gave me a bit of their talent in allowing me to see how a story is really reported, because you have to understand the foundation before it gets to the teleprompter and what is done. The greatest experience I could have. And to wrap up my resume reel, my interview was with Robin Roberts. We did the interview in one take. And she was impressed. The camera people and people in the studio, the producers, they were all just clapping and everybody was screaming. They were like, "That's great. We only have to do one take of this." And I was all smiling and happy. And they're like, "Well, there's one thing we have to do over. Your introduction. You said good morning. You left out America." So I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute. That's a big part. We got to make sure we go back and do that over." But even with that little small retake, it gave me the assurance that I was ready. And Robin said to me that day, which was my last day of my internship, she said, "You're ready. Now's the time for you to go out and pursue the career that you've always wanted to do," because I shared with her about my 8-year-old self and reporting the news with Mr. Walter Cronkite. And so for several months, I did that. I applied for various positions all across the United States. I must have been applying for at least 25 to 50 jobs per day, Monday through Saturday. And I got a couple of interviews, with places and local stations in some cities that I had never heard of, yet less could pronounce. So I wondered if I was really ready, because most of these positions, you would have to be the camera person, the editor, the interviewer, and then you would have to report the story. So knowing I did not have all of those skill sets, I said, maybe I'm really not ready. And I began to doubt myself. In November of 2024, I graduated with my bachelor's degree from Southern New Hampshire University. So again, that passion, it started coming back. The light was dim, but it started glowing even brighter, because now I had my degree. Okay, I can check that off my plan. I got my degree, I'm ready. I can go out here, got my resume reel. I interviewed Robin for my reel. I had my internships, 2 internships with ABC News and local ABC News. I'm ready to do this. But still, no interviews, no job offers. So one day, when I sat in front of my laptop as I was searching for a job, I got this message that came in saying that I have been nominated to be a TEDx Talk for SNHU speaker. And that was it. I refueled my passion. I was ready. I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I may not be in the position right now, but I'm going to be on the stage as a TEDx Talk SNHU speaker. My passion had been refueled. I knew at that time that all of the steps I had put in my blueprint in making my midlife career change, they were successful. I could check step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I was ready. And here I stand today with the 8-year-old inside of me, what my grandmother instilled in me in front of that dresser mirror, to always be camera ready. Thank you.